back everyone for some more Apollo Justice Ace Attorney here on Nintendo Switch. Last time around we began day 1 of the trial in the case against Vera Misham, and we got to listen to testimony from our key witness who happens to be a certain Mr. Breschel. And we actually heard all his testimony, including a recap of the interview, but now we're going to begin things by cross-examining his roundup of the testimony that has been given in court. But before we continue on, hope you guys have an awesome day today. Hope you guys are doing well. So without further ado, we are ready to cross-examine Mr. Breschel one last time. I was gonna say, where's it gonna pop up? Right. I still have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. Cross-examination. Interview recap. Only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug, and nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Not one thing. You sure? Yep, sure as sure can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Burke Breschel with this interview leaves studio, end quote. Oh god. Come on. It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Where have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Oh, there is just one thing. I can think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By what you mean? Something other than a witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Misham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then, let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. Well, we're gonna present the letterbox. This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Breschel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that, and yeah, it was true. Furthermore, you went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Oh! But that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night, the yellow envelope disappeared. Objection! Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime. Of course, this changes nothing. Huh? He has a point, Mr. Justice. What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then, witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything there, Forehead. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. Okay, letter was put in the post from the studio, but I hardly think that it matters. Okay. Oh. The only thing that touched you is that... Okay. Let's go ahead and press this statement. You sure about that? Well, to be really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies all the time. One of those candies might have been poisoned. Objection! Yet, at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room, and no mint residue was found. That was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. Do you think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof... The possibility is there. I can feel it, just maybe not prove it. Not yet. Let's go ahead and save. Oh, shoot. Sorry about this. Impossibility isn't gonna cut it. Not now. Mr. Mitchum ingested that poison via a route other than coffee, and I can prove it. Proof is possible. Here goes nothing. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, Air Forehead, not possibilities. Of course, and, Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did. Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume. Of course, which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp? Ah. As we all know, stamps come with dry glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. Objection! No one was talking to actually lick stamps in this day and age. Objection! Even if he wanted to talk to him, he couldn't. He's dead after all. Objection! Okay, so he licked the stamp. But wait, how does that explain the actual quinine on the rim of the coffee mug? Objection! If he licked the back of a poisoned stamp, the poison would go on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Mitchum. Mr. Mitchum poisoned the coffee mug himself. Order, order, order! But that doesn't... Does it? Recall, if you would. Atracquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. You have something to add, Mr. Bressel? Uh-oh, his nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier. Well, that's the thing, see? After he put his letter in that envelope, Mr. Mitchum sat there searching his desk drawer for something. Yes, a stamp, a so-called postage stamp, end quote. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he just run out? Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps, not a single one. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's the evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp? Well, we do have something that proves that by means of this. The tiny frame. Well, that certainly is a cute little frame, and by little, I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So what? Ah, apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atracquinine residue. What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most? You aren't saying. Oh, but I am. Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Order! 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 The poison stamp was in this frame? Impossible! Prosecutor Gavin, why would he put something like that on his desk? Don't tell me he added those so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Bressel? Please stop jittering around like that. The victim was a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger's friends makes enemies too, end quote. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. Objection! Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Gaviner's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. Oh, I disagree. Come again? Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail! Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence, per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Misham the stamp of death. Well, what about this? Isn't this the envelope? The one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. There were 2 pages in the envelope. This is page 1. And this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. Ah! In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison on the stamp, lick lick gasp, end quote. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter asked? He would sign the document, put it in an envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath, and the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. Such a splendid imagination you have there, Forehead. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So, this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago. Yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe? Really? Well... It is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope? A stamp that then became the murder weapon? How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well... It was 7 years ago and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see. Very well. I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fraulein, Clavier. Oh god, it's Kristoff. And there's Emma. Ah, Emma! Well, like my Kristoff Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking at the Fraulein detective? Someone had to come dig you out of all this mess you're making this case. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in an envelope. Easy. Care to explain yourself, Fraulein detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? That's right, the poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once. You can open it on the authority of the court. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Whoa, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's quinine residue. And it happens to be in the shape of a freaking postage stamp. Oh, I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Hey there, OP Sonic 84. Now, 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last. Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Why did this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Bishop figured it out. Figured what out? He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead, so he sent his reply with a different stamp, and put his deciphered evidence in a frame. Oh, you still here? Can I make a statement here on the record? I, Spark Razortooth Threshold, claim this scoop as mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood. By sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Stir falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Order, order, order! I see no room for further argument here. Though I admit, this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote. Uh-oh, I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge. I see no need for further debate on this matter. The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been an defendant. Apollo! I think we just won. Very well, this court finds defendant...
Objection!
Is this the bright future of our legal system? Prosecutor Gavin? A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for Gavin's shows are invalid after 2 weeks. But it doesn't make sense any other way. It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in their forehead's claim. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? I'm gonna explain that. He must have realized it was poison. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed the trap and put the stamp in the frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question, why 7 years later did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Ah, surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot. He put the murder weapon in the frame on his desk for 7 years, and forgot? You expect us to believe he sprang the trap on himself? Oh. Yeah, he brings up a good point. While I admit, this is all quite shocking myself, it does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo! I don't think we're winning anymore. I don't think we are either. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you.
Objection!
Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing ever existed.
Objection!
What about the anthraquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be anthraquinine residue. But, forehead, it's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but... even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all. Sorry if you hear that in the background. My puppies are going nuts again. I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again. Apollo, were we wrong the whole time? I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence. I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year. And before that, we're going to go ahead and save, because this next part is pretty important. Mr. Justice? Yes, Your Honor? Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison anthraquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of a yellow envelope. An envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it. Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp, and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp. I'm afraid you're right, which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case. I haven't been on the wrong track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of anthraquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow. Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us? The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. Ah, fake clue? Fascinating. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off the poison show is none other than... well, it's Drew Misham. That the victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand. I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself.
Objection!
Congratulations, you completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger? It makes a good story, I'll give you that. The fake clue. Fakes. Forgeries. Ah! I know that face. That's I just had an idea face. I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake? Come again? 7 years ago, a forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why? That's what I want to know. Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again. The victim was a fake? One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake. Order, order, order! So you're telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake? Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You'd better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo. I'm afraid you're gonna have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show it just who the real Drew Misham was. If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham was himself a forgery. The real forger was, well, it was his daughter. There can be only one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Order! 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 Mr. Justice, this is going on a limb, even for you. I kinda agree. I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger. Well, actually, it does make certain kind of sense. One more thing. Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well? Fascinating. Vera Misham? You've been paying attention to the trial so far? Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw in her face? She's staring holes in into Prosecutor Gavin's face. I'm used to being stared at by Fraulein's, believe me. Though they usually talk to me, too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes. So the forger, Drew Misham, was you? Yes, it was me. What? What? The court was in uproar, and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. And you know what, I was actually going to finish day 1 of the trial in this episode, but I think we've gone on long enough. And there is quite a bit of testimony that we need to hear yet. Well, actually, a vital piece of testimony. And we are going to be finally, at least I hope, we're going to be listening to some testimony from Vera Misham. We're just going to go ahead and save. But that is where we're going to call it for this episode. And next time I see you guys, we are going to be coming back from recess. And in the next episode, we will definitely be finishing day 1 of the trial. Even though I wanted to do it this episode. But this video is already going on almost a half an hour as it is. So The next episode may or may not be a bit of a shorter episode, but it is going to be concluding things nicely here for the first day, and you guys probably already see why it was such a mess, especially this birthday of the child, why I had to split it up the way that I did, but we will be finishing off the first day of the trial next episode. That way we can get and move forward and trying to build a better defense, try to acquit the mission of the poisoning of her dad. So, hope you guys looking forward to this, the next episode, as much as you enjoyed watching this one. Thank you guys so much for watching this. Hope you guys enjoying the series so far. I will see you guys again next time.